at the forefront of politics.
Our enemy is Trump. He is the enemy. We gotta unite. If we're not a united party, we lose to Trump.
On the front lines of activism.
There's certain fights, if we don't engage, they win. This is a fundamental question of who we are.
And delivering your daily dose of comedy.
Donald Trump, when he had his physical, they had his blood pressure, and mine is higher than his. Oh. And the irony is mine is higher because of him.
From the blue wave.
We flipped. Enough seats to take control of the House. We control the House.
To 2020 and beyond. This is the Dean Obeidallah Show on Sirius XM Progress, Channel 127.
And welcome to the show, brothers and sisters. Monday, September 30th. I'm Dean Obeidallah. As always, I'm here to be your MBFF. And there's just so much breaking news. I don't know what to tell you. There's no normal way to cover what has just happened in the last hour in terms of breaking news. But we're still going to talk about the issues, the big issues, but there are little things, and it all ties in together. And oddly enough, I was just talking to Michelangelo, who was just here, and we always chat for about 5 minutes. Oddly enough, it reminds me of a flip side of what happened to Hillary Clinton. Because with Hillary Clinton, there was one story about emails, but then there was the WikiLeaks dropping emails, and then other stories about emails dropping here and there, and Podesta emails, and nothing made sense. But all it was for the people at home was this idea that drip, 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 Hillary's email, she did something wrong. That was what people got who were not following the details. Not us, but, mainstream Americans not following it, and it colored Hillary in a certain way. Right now, you just had a breaking news story right before we went on air. Michael covered it quickly, that Trump pressured the Prime Minister of Australia just a couple of weeks ago in the White House to get information on the way the FBI investigation began in July 2016 of Trump. And that was the starting. They keep calling it the beginning of the Mueller probe. It's not the beginning. That's the beginning of the FBI investigation. Then you have another story that Bill Barr, according to Washington Post reporting, I'm looking at it right here, it literally just went up at 5:11 p.m. Attorney General Bill Barr personally asked foreign officials to aid inquiry into CIA FBI activities in 2016. So if you're at home and you're not following all the details, but you knew Trump asked a foreign leader for help for his campaign, and you didn't like that, and you look at all this other stuff and you're like, oh my God, Trump's asking everyone to help his campaign and to help him personally, and he's got Bill Barr doing things too. So on some level, it reminds me of Hillary Clinton. What she went through was horribly unfair to her. And again, it's drip, 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 and not everything makes sense. And you can go through each issue if you want, and some might actually be reasonable and some unreasonable. But together, the painting that is being pictured, the picture being painted, and if this was a jigsaw puzzle, it is this: Donald Trump himself and his administration is doing everything they can to help Donald Trump personally and politically, at the expense of being focused on one thing, serving the American people. And that's the big takeaway here. And so this is really unhelpful for Trump. We're going to get through some of the details. We got a lot of guests tonight, but I'm going to definitely make time for phone calls. I so want to hear from you, but we were able, certain people became available, like Malcolm Nance. We wanted to chat with Malcolm about this insanity of what's going on. We have John Delaney, 2020 candidate, and Chris Liu. So we have some great guests. But let's talk first about Trump freaking out in the last 24 hours. Let me ask you a question here. Tell me if this is wrong. Anyone else get an inappropriate amount of joy watching Trump freak out over impeachment? Is that terrible? Are we bad people for that? I shouldn't assume you're enjoying it. I'm enjoying it. Am I a bad person for enjoying it? Does it bring... I hope not. And I'm sure others, some of you do, and some go, oh, that's not nice. Don't enjoy the suffering of others. And I generally don't. But with Trump, I do. I have to be honest with you. I can't lie. I can't hide my glee. In the last 24 hours alone, Donald Trump has called for the arrest of Adam Schiff, literally called for the arrest and said that he is committed treason, said the White House whistleblower that he's looking for the person and that he's a spy. And last night, and it broke more this morning as people saw it on Twitter, Trump tweeted supporting the idea of a civil war, which was brought up by someone else, but he didn't retweet the guy. He actually typed the thing out that Robert Jeffress said. And we'll talk about all of this in more detail. And people say to me, hey, Dean, what do you think Trump will do next? And here's my problem. I always tell you this. I don't know, because I'm not a sociopath I'm not a psychopath. If I was, I could answer that question. As I said this before, we've all seen Silence of the Lambs, right? You've seen Silence of the Lambs. And Clarice sits there with Hannibal Lecter and figures out what the other insane people are going to do. We need that political version of Hannibal Lecter. I'll be there. I'll go. I'll be Clarice. I'll sit there and share stories of my life and yes, the lambs were crying. Tell me, what's the answer? And he'll look at me and the crazy Hannibal Lecter of politics will say, Trump's going to eat Nancy Pelosi's liver. Oh, God, we didn't see that coming. But it's true. We're going to get to the point today. We're going to talk about, there's no wrong answers, just scary ones. What will Trump do next? Because I didn't think you should look at American history of politics to stay in power when challenged. And I think that's much more instructive of where this is going to end up. Scary, but instructive. So why is Trump freaking out? Various reasons. This is my theory. I want to hear yours, but here's my theory. First of all, Trump's minions were on TV over the weekend. It's an understatement to say it did not go well. I'm not saying it's horrific, but did not go well. And let's start out, quick clip. Here's Stephen Miller on Fox News, a place where it should always go well if you're in Trump world, unless, of course, you're being interviewed by Chris Wallace, who's actually a journalist, him and Shep Smith. And here's Chris Wallace slamming Stephen Miller in the face, literally telling him to his face that this is obfuscation. Let's hear clip number 1, Stephen Miller.
About the information Ukraine possesses about the corruption of the previous administration.
Okay, but let's just make this point. In May, as part of a regular interagency process, in May, 2 months before he withheld the aid, the Pentagon certified to Congress, a formal process certified to Congress after a rigorous process and after consultation with the State Department that Ukraine had made dramatic progress in fighting corruption and that the aid should be released. Why did the president, if the argument is corruption, why did the president go against his own Pentagon and his own State Department?
Chris, I don't understand how you can ask that question while at the same time admonishing the president for wanting to get to the bottom of perhaps one of the biggest corruption scandals concerning Ukraine in the last few years.
I'm not admonishing anybody. I'm simply asking why did he go?
Chris.
I mean, with all due respect, this is an exercise in obfuscation. Why did the president go against his own Pentagon?
When you're on Fox News and the host says, essentially, this is a masterclass in being deceitful, it's not a good day. So Stephen Miller down. Next, you got Jim Jordan. Everyone knows Jim Jordan, the congressman from Ohio, who, this is not an exaggeration, of course, was a wrestling coach at Ohio State when numerous people were sexually molested. And the allegations are he turned a blind eye to it. He denies that. But I say that because Jake Tapper brings that up to his face because Jim Jordan is out there peddling lies. And Jake Tapper just gutted him. And you can listen because I'm not going to play more than this exchange. But before it, Jim Jordan's up there being like, blah, 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 blah. And then when all of a sudden, when Jake Tapper says this, he becomes silent. So here's clip number 2.
Wait a minute. So Rudy Giuliani, the president's private lawyer, had a conversation.
I think that you came here and leveled a bunch of accusations and allegations about Hunter Biden.
I didn't level. I just said the facts. He didn't get paid $50,000 a month.
He was paid by a foreign company. Yeah, he was paid by Burisma. But Joe Biden was trying to get a prosecutor who was not pursuing corruption fired. It was supporting.
Amazing the gymnastics you guys will go through to defend what you really think
the vice president,
it's facts. The vice president,
and I would think somebody who's been accused of things in the last year and two would be more sensitive about throwing out wild allegations.
I'm not throwing out wild. I'm throwing out the facts.
The prosecutor was not pursuing corruption. That's why the entire West wanted him fired, including anti-corruption activists in Ukraine. I don't understand what you don't get about that.
I get that. I'm just talking about this specific case that there's been reporting on.
Jim Jordan. If you watch the whole interview, you'd see why I'm laughing, because the whole time he's being cocky, and then Jake brings up the allegations against him, and literally Jim Jordan goes, oh, what? Facts. What? Next, pass, commercial. Can we go to commercial? That didn't go well. And then Lindsey Graham on Face the Nation, where the host frankly did not do a great job at all fact-checking him, but the slight bit she did troubled Lindsey Graham. And again, you can see they are so on the defensive. And here's Lindsey Graham failing on CBS clip 3.
Do you think it was ethical for the president to bring up Joe Biden?
Yes, absolutely. I think somebody ought to look at whether or not Joe Biden had the prosecutor fired in an improper way. I love Joe Biden. I don't want to look at it. I want an inspector general, somebody like Mueller. Did Biden know that his son was receiving $50,000 a month from a gas company being investigated by the prosecutor?
Isn't that just his payment for being on the board?
The guys on the board being investigated for corruption, and the guy doing the investigation is asked to be fired by Biden. I don't know what happened. It smells to high heaven. I never said the Mueller witch hunt, the Mueller investigation was a witch hunt. I introduced legislation to protect Mueller. This seems to me like a political setup. It's all hearsay. You can't get a parking ticket conviction based on hearsay. The whistleblower didn't hear the phone call.
Right.
Who told the whistleblower about the phone call and everything else?
And Lindsey Graham went on and on and on. And so Donald Trump is freaking. And then it gets worse. So you've got this. It is not going well on the Sunday shows. All the media reviews of it are not going well, especially Stephen Miller on Fox News, probably a place he was really watching. Then on ABC, I won't play the clip, I'll just tell you, Donald Trump's former Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security, Tom Bossert, who was there for years, who left in 2018 when he was forced out by John Bolton, goes on, says he was deeply disturbed by the implications of Trump calling the Ukrainian president. Also, he literally, step by step, destroyed the idea that Joe Biden did anything wrong in regards to getting the prosecutor fired. So you've got that on national TV, a former person who worked for Trump on right after Rudy Giuliani, not happy. Adam Schiff is on. I'll play clips later with Chris Liu. Adam Schiff goes on, does a fabulous job, very lawyer-like, as a former prosecutor. You got that. Then third, a poll comes out yesterday. CBS poll asks America, what percentage of Americans support? This was the poll. They didn't ask that. They asked, do you support an impeachment inquiry? Not impeachment and removal of Trump, an inquiry. What percentage of Americans, if you haven't seen this poll, what percentage of Americans do you think support the inquiry? The answer is 55%. And what percentage of Republicans, and this kind of stunned me, what percentage of Republicans support the inquiry? 23%, meaning 1 out of every 4 Republicans is now on board with investigating their beloved Donald Trump. Now, some of them might think, hey, he'll be vindicated. That's fine. Or others might think the guy did something wrong. It's hard to say. What I found really interesting is that of the independent voters, 35% said Trump deserves to be impeached now. This was interesting, the CBS poll. But 24% said they're not sure of independence, which means that 24%, folks, this is our job. Our job is to reach out to these independents. You're not going to switch a Trump supporter, forget it. But if you know someone who doesn't follow politics closely, that's probably part of this group of independent voters who don't know exactly what's going on, and do your job, do the best you can to explain to them. Donald Trump asked a foreign leader to get dirt on his opponent to help him win an election in America. That is wrong. Our election should be decided by Americans, not by foreign interference. And if they ask about the Joe Biden thing, you can make it very clear that it's BS, and that for various reasons. One, the most stunning is that the reporting now is very clear. The time that Joe Biden had the prosecutor fired, the investigation had ended well over a year before of the company Hunter Biden worked at. So there was no investigation going on at the time. They're lying and saying it is. Every reporting I've seen says it's not. It was not true. Now, here's a very interesting part of this poll. Only 28% of Americans think Trump's actions with the Ukraine was proper. Only 28%. So that means if you're a Trumper, if you're in that 28% that think what Trump did on the phone call was fine, you're in such a sliver of our nation's electorate. 28%. So only about 1 out of 4 Americans think what he did was fine. Some might think it's a crime. Some might think it's inappropriate. Some might think it's unethical. That was not the question. The question is, was it proper? Only 28%. So when you see the Trumpers on TV defending Trump, keep in mind, they are part of a small sliver of Americans, and they are desperate to grow that number. And it is our job to defeat them with the facts. And we'll go through that a lot today. We got Malcolm Nance on, we got Chris Liu on. We're going to talk about a great deal, like the arguments about hearsay. And I covered it Friday, but when Chris Liu comes on, who's a lawyer who worked for Obama administration, but also worked on oversight committee as an attorney, we'll just destroy that idea of this is hearsay, so it's not relevant. The whistleblower complaint, just quickly in summary, means nothing. We're all working off Donald Trump's own transcript that he released. And that's loosely a transcript, but it's his own words. I don't even care what the whistleblower complaint says, because it's all in Donald Trump's own words in his transcript. So Trump, they've created this false flag. It's the whistleblower means anything. So you've got all that. So what does Trump do? He freaks out. He freaks out last night and today. He said about Adam Schiff that he should be questioned at the highest level for fraud and treason. He misspelled the word fraud, which was just perfect. Today, he suggested arresting Adam Schiff. He literally called for arresting the chairman of the House Intel Committee. He attacked a whistleblower, saying his story is not holding up and it's fake. And then it got very dangerous, and that's what the Civil Wars talk. He retweeted Pastor Robert Jeffress because, like an evangelical Christian, what would Jesus do? He would talk about a civil war, right? That's what Jesus would never do. Are you kidding me? But in any event, so Trump does not retweet Jeffress. He writes down what he takes in as what Jeffress says on television and tweets out, the Democrats are successful in removing the president from office, which they never will be. It will cause a civil war-like fracture in this nation from which our country will never heal. Now, Trump raises the specter of a civil war. And it's not the first time in the Trump orbit they've suggested if there's impeachment, there will be some kind of revolution, some kind of violence. In fact, 2018, here's Rudy Giuliani on if Trump is impeached, what will happen. Clip 4.
I think impeachment would be totally horrible. I mean, there's no reason. He didn't collude with the Russians. He didn't obstruct justice. Everything Cohen says has been disproved. You'd only impeach him for political reasons, and the American people would revolt against that.
So revolt. Okay, you can debate, does revolt mean violence or not? Does he mean politically revolt? That's possible. But then here was Roger Stone in 2017. And he's very clear what will happen if there's impeachment. And again, he's very close to Donald Trump. Here's clip number 5.
Try to impeach him. Just try it. You will have a spasm of violence in this country, an insurrection like you've never seen.
You think?
No question.
You think if you got impeached, like the country would go
Both sides are heavily armed, my friend. Yes, absolutely. This is not 1974. The people will not stand for impeachment. A politician who votes for it would be endangering their own life.
Roger Stone, you just heard him. Any politician that votes for impeachment will be endangering their own life. That's what we're hearing. Now this, but not now. This is, in the past when they were talking about impeachment. Roger Stone has his own issues. He's going to be on trial soon. So he's got that issue to deal with. Giuliani or Stone saying this is dangerous stuff. But the president of the United States, Donald Trump, retweeting to over 60 million people, raising the specter of civil war. And some might say he didn't call for civil war. He's just warning there will be one if he's impeached. No, as Ruth Ben-Ghiat will go through tomorrow, the authoritarian expert, what Trump is doing, it's called priming. He's priming his base. He's priming his base to accept this. He's priming his base that if I am impeached, I need you to rise up and have a civil war. That's what he's saying. How many will listen? I think a small number. And I'm being honest about this. There are people who might love Trump, but how many are going to give their lives for this jackass? I can't think there will be that many because you're going to go to jail for the rest of your life. That's life, or you'll be killed. How many will be gunned? Next time a Democrat gets elected, do everything they can to impeach that person? And I could see that. That's much more of a... But will some percentage of Trump's base, 1,000, will they rise up as a militia? It's possible. 500? It's possible. Do you think Donald Trump has joked to military leaders, generals? Because Trump loves to joke, right? And I put that in air quotes. Like, remember, Russia, are you listening? He called that a joke. Do you think Trump has joked, air quote, to generals? Like, I might need your support one day to defend me against the Democrats. And they all laugh. Ha, ha, ha. That's priming. He's priming them. He's testing them to see if they're on board. If the day comes, I need you to get the military to surround the White House to keep me here in power. Does anyone for a second doubt Donald Trump would do that if he could? Of course not. And again, I always tell you, I say these things not to scare, but to prepare. Anything can happen with Donald Trump. I'm hoping that Trump's all bluster, maybe a small handful of people do something bad in his name. The rest accept this is America. We have ballots. We have a constitution. If your beloved president is impeached for crimes, and it's clear Trump has committed crimes, so be it. You still have the White House. You'll have Mike Pence there, unless he's impeached as well, but unlikely. And we go on. And we have election in 2020, and America decides who is our next president. That's how it should go. Agree or disagree, doesn't matter. We have an election. It ends. If a Democrat, this is so cliche for me to say, but do you imagine if President Obama got on the phone in 2011 and asked for dirt on Mitt Romney to help his campaign. Can you even imagine what they would have done on the right? You can't even imagine for a second the number of hearings they would have had. And you know what? They would have been right to have them. That's the truth. They would have been absolutely right to have those hearings. Just like Democrats are right to have these hearings now. There's little doubt Donald Trump will be impeached. Mitch McConnell said today, he made news on CNBC. Again, we'll discuss this later with Chris Liu in more detail. Mitch McConnell made it very clear, if Donald Trump is impeached in the House, the rules of the Senate require him to have a trial. So there's no more disputing, is he going to Merrick Garland the whole situation and not allow a trial? He said today, yes, there will be a trial. The length of it, he said, well, that's up for discussion. But the more evidence presented by the House Democrats and the American people sees this, the more Mitch McConnell covers that up. He's up for re-election. The worse it is for McConnell. So this is where we are, my friends. Donald Trump is freaking. He has every reason to freak. It's going to get much worse before it gets ever better. So let's take a break. And, the phone lines are all locked up, and I want to talk to you more. We're going to have, if he's on time, John Delaney for a little bit. Then we'll come back and take calls. Then Malcolm Nance for a bit. Then we'll take calls. So we're going to have time for calls in between. But it'll be sort of in between the guests as opposed to like a long chunk like usual. Unless we lose John Delaney. Then we'll just take calls for the next half hour, which will be disappointing to lose John Delaney. But if that happens, we'll just take calls. If not, we're going to have John Delaney with us for a little bit, talking about what it's like out in Iowa, New Hampshire right now, about this very issue, about impeachment. If he was in the House, what would he would do? Does he think Donald Trump should resign? Talk to John Delaney about that and more after this break. Look, it's time the media start calling out Trump's false statements for what they are. Lies. Trump is a liar. And by the looks of it,